The night the landslide hit, I was trapped under rubble, bleeding, freezing, calling the man I loved. But Thomas didn't answer. He was too busy celebrating his mistress's birthday. That night I realized, the man who promised to protect me, left me to die. And the boy I once saved in the rain? He's the one who came back to build me a future. The first sign was the silence. Not the silence of comfort or focus, but the sharp, anxious kind, the kind that wraps around your ribs and squeezes. Thomas hadn't spoken since we passed the turnpike. He was gripping the wheel, scrolling through his phone at red lights. His lips twitched into a smile once, then twice. I didn't have to ask. Evelyn. The ghost who was never gone. The girl he swore was in the past, but somehow still lived in our present. A notification lit up the dashboard. Ava's 30th birthday today, party popper. I said nothing. I just stared out at the gray clouds swallowing the mountaintops ahead of us. We were supposed to be heading to a client presentation at the Hillside Resort, an account Thomas had spent months pursuing. A contract that would make or break our quarter. A pitch we had rehearsed over and over. I'd spent all night polishing the slides. He had spent the night, texting her. Elena, Thomas said suddenly, can you take lead when we get there? My head turned slowly. Excuse me. I forgot today's her birthday. She just messaged. She's doing something small, intimate. And you're going? It's just for a few hours. You've got the deck. You know the numbers better than me anyway. He said it like it was a compliment. Like abandoning me last minute on a critical pitch was just a minor scheduling issue. My voice came out tight. You've been chasing this deal for weeks. And now you're the one chasing it. You're great at this stuff, Elena. Come on, don't make it weird. No apology. Just a grin, a check of his hair in the rearview mirror, and the smell of his cologne as he adjusted his collar. I hated how handsome he looked even when I wanted to throw him out of the car. We pulled into the resort driveway, the rain tapping harder against the windows. An assistant from the client's team rushed out with an umbrella. Thomas didn't even wait for her. I'll be back tonight, he said, grabbing his phone and jacket. You're going to crush it. And then he was gone. I gave the presentation. Alone. I answered every question, handled every objection, and kept my expression calm when the lead investor asked where Thomas was. Urgent family matter, I said smoothly. Not a lie. Ava had always felt like a matter of family. The kind that ruins yours. By the end, I had the signed papers in hand. We won the account. Correction, I won the account. And Thomas? Probably eating cake, clinking glasses, and reminiscing with a woman who still called him Tommy. I skipped the post-meeting drinks and loaded everything into the trunk of my car. The resort lights glowed warm behind me, a sharp contrast to the freezing rain ahead. I should have stayed the night. Everyone else was. The roads were dangerous. The storm had worsened. But I just wanted to leave. I couldn't stand another moment of pretending I wasn't furious. Driving down the mountain, my mind spiraled through the years. 5 years of being good enough. 5 years of tiptoeing around a ghost. I wasn't even jealous anymore. I was tired. So tired. That's why I didn't notice the mudslide until it was too late. The tires slipped. The steering wheel jerked in my hands. A blur of rain, branches, and earth crashed past me. I veered hard to avoid it and slammed directly into a tree. Metal groaned. Glass shattered. My body jolted forward and back again. I sat in stunned silence, the engine hissing faintly, blood dripping slowly from my temple. My ears rang. My fingers trembled as I fumbled for my phone. I should have called emergency services. But some part of me, weak and foolish, still reached for Thomas. Right. Then he picked up. Elena. His voice was curt, distracted. Laughter in the background. Clinking glasses. I heard Ava's voice. Soft giggling. He was there. There was a mudslide, I said. I crashed. I hit something. My head. Pause. Then came his sigh. Seriously? Right now? I blinked. I'm not joking. You always do this, he cut me off. You pull stunts every time I'm with Ava. My heart skipped. What are you talking about? Come on, Elena. You're not seriously pretending to be hurt just because I went to a birthday party. I'm bleeding, Thomas. He laughed. He actually laughed. If this was real, you'd be calling the police, not me. Honestly, Elena. Grow up. I stared at the dashboard. Blood blurred my vision. Let's break up, I said softly. He didn't respond. Even the background noise paused for a second. Then faintly I heard someone snort and say, "Dan's fighting with his girlfriend again. She's always so jealous," another voice chimed in. "I'd dump her for Ava too," someone joked. And then, "Who said we're breaking up?" Thomas's voice, casual and light. My mouth parted. That's when I knew. This wasn't a fight. This was the end. I hung up. In the quiet aftermath, rain beating against the broken glass, I leaned my head back against the seat and whispered, "This time I'm really done with you." Not a threat. Not a ploy. Just truth, cold and steady as the storm around me. I sat in the driver's seat, barely breathing. The shattered windshield let in the rain, soaking my dress and smudging blood down my cheek. The night was too quiet, broken only by the occasional crack of thunder. After the call ended, I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I sat perfectly still, feeling the weight of 5 wasted years pressing down on me like the airbag still clinging to my chest. Thomas's voice, dismissive, annoyed, cruel, rattled in my skull. I replayed the sound of laughter in the background and the joke someone made about me as if I were some clingy ex on speakerphone. As if I wasn't the woman he had once promised to marry. My fingers were trembling when I reached for my phone again, finally doing what I should have done first. I called emergency services. My voice cracked when I gave them my location, but I managed to stay calm. Once I hung up, a numb silence swallowed me. Time moved strangely after that. I don't remember falling asleep, but when I blinked again there were flashing lights. Someone was shouting. Hands were pulling at the car door. I remember voices calling my name, asking questions, how many fingers, what day it was. My legs refused to move at first. I smelled smoke. Maybe from the engine, maybe from the hot wires and busted dashboard. And then I blacked out. The next time I woke up it was morning. Bright. Too bright. The ceiling above me was plain white. I blinked against the sterile lighting, the faint beep of monitors and the soft rustle of nurses' shoes outside the room. I wasn't in pain, just dull and sore like I'd been run over by my own memories. I tried to sit up but stopped with a wince. A dull ache pulsed from the side of my head. My arms were scraped, bandaged. My ankle was tightly wrapped. "Elena Moore?" A nurse peeked in, holding a clipboard. I nodded slowly. "You're in Ridge Valley Hospital. Mild concussion. No internal bleeding. We stitched up the side of your forehead, but otherwise you're incredibly lucky." I gave a dry, humorless smile. "Lucky?" She offered me a glass of water. "You've got someone waiting outside. Says he was in the accident with you." I froze. "What?" "He's in a wheelchair for now, nothing too serious. A leg fracture and a minor head injury. He's been asking if you're awake." My brows knitted. "Wait, someone hit me?" She nodded. "Rear-ended you." Tree branch broke through the windshield on his side. He was barely conscious when the EMTs got there. "You signed the liability paperwork for him at the crash site." What? The memory returned like a slow tide. The second impact. The sound of metal behind me. And then, darkness. The rest was a blur. I began, but the nurse had already stepped out to let him in. The door opened and in rolled a man, messy hair, bandages across one eyebrow and a leg in a cast. His hospital gown was wrinkled, his posture lazy, his expression, amused. He looked like the kind of guy who never panicked. The kind of guy who had once been a chaos-loving teenager and never quite grew out of it. When his eyes met mine, he smiled like he'd been waiting all morning. "You're awake," he said as if we were old friends. "I am," I said cautiously. "And you are?" "They told me your name's Elena." "Liam. Apparently, I owe you my life." What?" "You signed the surgery authorization for me. Said you were my to-be wife so they could operate. Honestly, bold move. Kinda romantic." He grinned. "I always thought I'd go out alone, but if someone like you wants to claim me, I'm good with that." I blinked. "I didn't." "You did," he said, holding up a clipboard with both our names on it. "In blood too. Very dramatic." I leaned back into the pillows, utterly stunned. "I thought you were unconscious." "I was. But I woke up mid-op and told the surgeon I have the prettiest women in my life. He told me to go back to sleep." I stared at him. He winked. "You're insane," I murmured. "Medically verified." I sighed, rubbing the bridge of my nose. I only said that so they'd treat you. You were bleeding out. You had glass in your leg. Right. So technically I still owe you. That means you can't get rid of me just yet. I looked him over. Messy hair, faint bruises, the light-hearted energy of someone who had no business being this cheerful. Are you always like this? He tilted his head. Only when my fake fiancé saves my life. I covered my face with a hand, laughing once, just once, and then shook my head. You're not my responsibility. Sure, he said casually. But you saved me anyway. That's gotta count for something. Later that afternoon, the doctor confirmed it. Liam had temporary retrograde amnesia from the concussion. He remembered his name, his birthday, and how to tie his shoes, but not how he got on that road or why he was following behind me. Not even why he'd been driving alone in the rain. I wasn't sure I believed him. There was something strange in the way he looked at me, familiar, almost too familiar. But I let it go. I was too tired to play detective. The hospital offered to transfer him to another wing, but he refused. I want to stay near my guardian angel, he said, refusing to release the wheels of his chair when they tried to move him. I wanted to be annoyed. But I wasn't. There was something oddly comforting about him. Like he didn't belong in my storm, but had decided to camp out in it anyway. His presence dulled the ache. He filled the silence with light. The next day there was a knock at the door. I expected it to be the nurse. Or maybe the doctor. Instead it was Thomas. In a suit. Holding a bouquet of cheap flowers. And behind him, Ava holding his arm. My stomach dropped. I didn't say a word. But Liam? He wheeled up next to my bed, plucked an apple from the tray and took a slow, exaggerated bite. Hey, he said with an easy smile, looking directly at Thomas. You must be the guy she dumped over the phone. Thomas's expression shifted. Ava's jaw dropped. I leaned back against the pillows and crossed my arms. Yes. That's him. Liam reached out and laced his fingers through mine without missing a beat. She's doing fine, by the way. I'm taking good care of her. Ava's grip on Thomas's arm tightened. Thomas's voice was low, hard. Elena, can we talk privately? No, I said calmly. His eyes flicked to our hands, then to my face. What is this? A joke. Liam leaned forward. No joke. Just me checking on my partner. And you are? Thomas's face twisted. You don't know what you're doing, Elena, he snapped. I didn't know for 5 years, I replied. But I do now. I looked over at Liam. He gave me the smallest nod. I didn't know who he really was or what he wanted. But in that moment I knew one thing. Anyone who shows up during a storm beats the one who disappears in the rain. After Thomas left the hospital room, the silence settled around us like dust. Liam was still beside me, peeling an orange he didn't even want. The scent filled the room, bright and citrusy, in contrast to the heaviness pressing against my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stared at the door where he had been standing moments ago. What are you thinking? Liam asked gently, handing me a slice. I took it and stared at it for a long moment. I'm thinking about how long I let myself be second place. He didn't push. He just sat there waiting, quiet and warm. So I let myself remember. I met Thomas Reed by accident, though fate probably thinks it was funny. Back then I was a no-name scholarship girl with too many jobs and too few friends. He was already a campus legend, founder of the Student VC Fund, guest speaker at 3 conferences, and son of some real estate developer whose name was always on donation plaques. We weren't supposed to collide. But one night we did, quite literally. It was just past 10 p.m. I had just finished cleaning tables at the campus cafe and dragged my body toward the library elevator. My legs were sore, my stomach empty. I remember my head pounding from too many hours awake. I was leaning against the corner of the elevator, trying not to pass out, when a voice said, "Hey, eat this before you faint." A piece of chocolate was suddenly hovering near my mouth. Unwrapped. Smooth. Melting slightly. I blinked up at the guy holding it. Messy brown hair, blazer too expensive for a college student, lazy grin like he had all the time in the world. "Can you see it now?" he teased, waving it slightly. I took it, too exhausted to argue. "Thanks." Before I could hand it back, he dumped 4 more chocolates into my palm. "Keep some on you next time. Blood sugar's a bitch." The elevator dinged. He stepped out with a box of desserts in his other hand. "Delivering to a girl?" I asked, maybe a little bitterly. He grinned. How'd you guess? We met again at a debate club mixer a few weeks later. I was on the verge of quitting. I couldn't afford to keep missing shifts for practice. He was a guest speaker. Said he admired how I handled a rebuttal during a regional match. Sat beside me, drank soda straight from the can, and asked if I'd ever thought about law school. We talked all night. And I, idiot that I was, started falling for him. Little by little. In the way he called me more like a nickname. In the way he always brought snacks to meetings because he remembered I skipped lunch. In the way he listened, like I was the smartest person in the room. I kept it to myself. Until one day I decided to tell him. I bought a box of chocolates, the same kind he gave me that first night. Spent 3 hours writing a note I never signed. But when I walked into the student lounge, I saw him standing there, smiling at a bracelet in his hands. Silver. Engraved with initials. His and Ava's. My heart stopped. Elena, he said, eyes bright. Would girls like this for a confession? The courage I'd been building for weeks crumbled like a sandcastle in a storm. I forced a smile. It's a great gift. She'll love it. He didn't notice how I was clutching my sleeve so hard I left nail marks in my arm. He never noticed. A week later he filled the quad with flowers and confessed to Ava in front of everyone. She laughed. In front of the crowd. Called it a joke. Said, Tommy, stop being weird. He played it off like he didn't care. But that night I found him sitting outside the dorms, staring at the sky with an untouched milk tea in his hand. She didn't even look back, he whispered. Not once. I sat beside him in silence. What could I say? That he deserved better? That I would have turned around in a heartbeat? Well, I just patted his back and told him, you'll be okay. He stayed friends with Ava. Of course he did. She dated guy after guy. And I stayed beside Thomas like a damn shadow. Helping him with presentations. Listening to him complain about other girls. Covering his shifts when he was sick. Comforting him when he failed his first startup. He took it all. Never once asked what I wanted. And I played the part. Like a fool. When Ava went abroad, something shifted. One night, Thomas asked me to grab drinks after a pitch event. He was tipsy and unfiltered. I think I'm finally over her, he said, knocking his glass against mine. Finally. Yeah. He grinned at me. You've always been here. Like, solid. I think I needed that more. The next day he kissed me. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't magical. It was almost cautious. Like he wasn't sure he meant it. But I clung to it. Because after years of waiting, I was desperate to believe that maybe, just maybe, this time it was real. We dated for 3 years before he proposed. No grand gesture. Just a ring left on my pillow with a note. Let's do this. I cried when I read it. He didn't understand why. Everything was good for a while. Simple. Safe. Until Ava came back. She showed up at his birthday party, eyes wide, smile brighter than the candles. She hugged him for too long. Laughed too loudly at his jokes. Sat closer than necessary. I noticed first. Then his parents noticed. Then, even his best friend asked me, you okay with all this? But Thomas didn't pull away. He never does. His phone lit up with her name more and more. Just catching up, he said. He started staying out later. Making excuses. And when I finally asked, do you still have feelings for her? He didn't even deny it. He just looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. Elena, he said once, exasperated. Didn't you used to help me win her over? You were so supportive back then. What changed? I stared at him. What changed? I fell in love with you. You made me believe you did too. And now you're asking why I stopped cheering you on as you walked toward someone else? The final straw wasn't even the cheating. It was the indifference. The way he looked at me like I was a burden. Like I was the one making things hard. So I stopped arguing. I stopped begging. And I packed my things. In the hospital room, I came back to the present slowly, my gaze still unfocused. Liam was silent beside me, arms folded. For once, no teasing. I wasted 5 years, I whispered. He handed me another slice of orange. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. You loved someone, he said simply. That's not a waste. But staying any longer would have been. I blinked. What do you know about it? He looked at me for a long second. More than you think. I didn't ask what that meant. And he didn't explain. But that night I fell asleep without needing sleeping pills for the first time in months. The day after I told Liam everything, I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't peace. It wasn't rage either. It was something duller. Like the quiet when you finally stopped screaming, because you know no one's listening. I scrolled through my messages out of habit even though I knew I shouldn't. My inbox was flooded. Thomas had gone from cold to desperate, as if my silence was the one thing he couldn't stand. Elena, why didn't you come home? I'm sorry about the party. Ava caught me off guard. Let me take you to pick the wedding dress next week. Please don't be upset anymore, okay? I didn't reply. I was about to put my phone down when another message popped up. This one wasn't from him. It was from a number I didn't recognize. No text. Just a photo. And in that photo, a man's bare torso sprawled out lazily in bed. His arm was tangled in a woman's hair. Her face was turned away, but her back was arched into him. The red scratch marks across his ribs, the intimacy of their posture. There was a birthmark on his side. A small, oddly shaped blotch. I knew that birthmark. I'd kissed it once. I stared at the screen. And stared. Then I scrambled to the bathroom and vomited. The retching wouldn't stop. Even after there was nothing left inside me, my body kept trying, like it wanted to purge every trace of him too. When I finally looked up, my face was pale and soaked with sweat. My eyes bloodshot. My lips cracked. I barely recognized myself. Disgusting, I whispered to the girl in the mirror. How did you end up like this? I blocked the number. Then I typed a message to Thomas. Let's break up. I'll come by in a few days to collect my things. I'm resigning too. Find someone else. Then I turned off call forwarding, packed my dignity into a mental suitcase and told myself this would be a clean break. No tears. No drama. Just closure. 3 days later, I returned to the apartment. I chose a weekday on purpose. I knew Thomas would be at the office. I hoped he'd be too much of a coward to show up early. The place was quieter than I expected. No scent of his cologne. No leftover coffee cups on the counter. Only my side of the closet remained half empty already. I packed in silence. I didn't have much. Some clothes, a few books, a small box of keepsakes I once thought were special. I didn't even need a full suitcase. But then I turned, and I saw it. The wedding dress. Hanging in the middle of the room. White. Christine. The exact one I'd picked out. The one I had begged the boutique to alter again and again until it fit me like a second skin. I hadn't even noticed it until that moment. He bought it. Why? I stepped closer. The layers of tulle, the delicate embroidery, the sweetheart neckline I once thought would make me feel like a princess. Now it looked like a costume. A uniform for a bride who never existed. I let out a dry laugh. Too late. Everything was too late. Just as I zipped the suitcase, the front door opened. I froze. Footsteps. Then the sound of keys hitting the console table. Then his voice. Elena. I turned around slowly. Thomas stood in the doorway looking like a man halfway through his own collapse. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes bloodshot. His mouth parted like he'd been rehearsing a speech, and forgot it the moment he saw me. He stared at the suitcase. At the wedding dress. Then back at me. His grip on the keys tightened. Elena, can we talk? What I wanted to do was slap him. Hard. Like the bold heroines in books. Those fearless women who raised their chins and delivered the final blow with icy grace. Instead, I stood there staring at the man I'd once called home. And I sighed. Talk. We sat on the couch like strangers pretending to remember something worth holding on to. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he cleared his throat. I know I messed up. But I've been thinking a lot. About us. About everything. I waited. When Ava came back, it was confusing. I didn't expect it to shake me the way it did. But I swear, I never planned to hurt you. You didn't need to plan it, I said calmly. You did it naturally. He flinched. I bought the dress you loved, he said. It's right there. That dress, I said softly, doesn't mean anything anymore. He swallowed. We can start over. I can. No, I looked him in the eye. Anything else? But his mouth opened again. Then closed. And then he snapped. Fine. Let's talk about your little hospital boyfriend. You really fell for some nobody? A guy with no family, no name, no future. My eyes narrowed. So you looked into him? Of course I did. His voice was sharp now. You think I'm just going to sit back while you throw our life away for some amnesiac stray? I stood up, slow and deliberate. And I slapped him. Hard. He staggered slightly. Elena. I'm an orphan too, I said coldly. Did you forget that? I didn't fall in love with you because you had money. I fell in love with you in spite of it. His lips parted. But I wasn't done. You stood beside me for 5 years and still never saw me. You loved the idea of being loved. But not me. Never me. He looked away, silent now. My phone buzzed. A soft chime. I glanced down. The screen read, "Incoming call, Ava Lynn." The name glowed like poison in a well. I tilted the screen toward him. She's waiting, I said. Don't keep her. He didn't move. So I hit accept and placed the phone in his hand. Her voice came through instantly. Loud. Breathless. Daniel, I mean Thomas. I'm so upset. My chest hurts. I can't stop crying. Can you come be with me? He looked at me, torn, unsure. And I smiled. Go. He stood slowly, still holding the phone to his ear. Elena, we can talk after, okay? No, I said. We won't. I didn't watch him leave. I wheeled my suitcase to the door and paused just once. You were in love with her for 10 years, I said without turning around. And I loved you through all of them. I pulled the door open. But not anymore. And then I walked out of the apartment, out of our life, with nothing but my pride and one last heartbeat of regret. In the elevator I didn't cry. In the cab I didn't flinch. When Liam called and asked if I'd be back in time for dinner, I even laughed. I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was free. When I got back to the hospital, the hallway lights flickered faintly above me. The scent of antiseptic hit me like it always did, clean, hollow, sterile. But I wasn't hollow anymore. Not after what I'd just done. I had walked away from a 5-year relationship with the man I thought would marry me. No final kiss. No lingering glance. Just a slammed door and the echo of my own footsteps in the corridor of the life we built. The life I left. As I entered Liam's room, I half expected him to be sleeping or watching TV. Instead, he was upright in bed, furiously trying to peel an orange with one hand and stabbing at a YouTube video with the other. He glanced up. My runaway fiancé returns. I smiled, dropping my bag by the chair. You're not supposed to eat citrus with stitches, genius. You're not supposed to abandon your handsome fake boyfriend without warning. I wasn't gone that long. He tilted his head dramatically. You were gone long enough for me to consider placing a missing persons report. Or bribing the nurse to call your number on the hospital PA system. I rolled my eyes, crossing my arms. I went to pack my things. From the apartment. His face straightened. And I left. There was a beat of silence. Then his eyes softened. For good. For good. Liam didn't say anything for a moment. He just nodded slowly and tossed a piece of orange in his mouth like he was pretending not to be relieved. I was grateful for that, for the way he never asked for details I wasn't ready to share. He didn't need to know about the dress. Or the voicemail. Or Ava's voice on speakerphone. He just scooted over and patted the bed. Come sit. I did. And for a while we said nothing. Because we didn't need to. It wasn't until 2 days later that the knock came. I had just returned with a nurse after Liam's physical therapy session. He was walking now, carefully, gingerly, but on his own. His stubbornness refused to let him stay in the wheelchair longer than necessary. The knock was sharp. Aggressive. Too familiar. I opened the door halfway. And there he was. Thomas. He didn't look like the broken man from our last conversation. No, this time he looked furious. Elena, he said tightly. We need to talk. I didn't move. Behind me I could feel Liam pause mid-stretch. Thomas's eyes narrowed. You seriously living with him now? It's a hospital room. Don't get cute. I stepped out into the hallway, letting the door click softly behind me. I crossed my arms. You said everything already, Thomas. No. You said everything. I didn't get to respond. You didn't need to. Ava was calling. You picked up. He scoffed. She was having a breakdown. She always is. He took a step closer. You really threw 5 years away over this? You really threw 5 years away over her 10-minute tantrum. His jaw clenched. So that's it? You're just done. I've been done, I said, my voice sharp. I was done when I called you bleeding and you said I was being dramatic. He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't let him. I was done when you left me to pitch alone, when you disappeared to a birthday party, when you made me feel small just because I wasn't her. Thomas's expression shifted from anger to desperation. Elena, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. But you did. Over and over. And the worst part is I let you. I took a deep breath. But not anymore. I turned to go back inside. And then he said it. I looked into that guy, he said flatly. Liam. No family. No records. Orphan. No real job. What exactly are you trying to prove, Elena? That you can survive without me? I turned slowly. My heart was pounding. Slapped him. Hard. The sound cracked down the hallway like a firework. Thomas stumbled back, stunned. You hit me, he said in disbelief, clutching his cheek. Yes, I said calmly. Over a stranger? Oh, over myself. Finally. Behind me the door creaked open. Liam stood there watching silently. Thomas turned toward him. She's only doing this because of you. Liam raised an eyebrow. Oh, I thought this was the part where you thank me for waking her up. You think you're better than me? Thomas snapped. I don't have to be, Liam replied, folding his arms. I just have to be present. Something you've clearly struggled with. Thomas turned back to me. You're seriously replacing me with that? I'm not replacing you, I said. You're irreplaceable. No one else could have wasted my time quite like you did. He stared at me, then gave a humorless laugh. You've changed. I healed, I corrected. There's a difference. I walked past him without another word. He didn't follow. That night, Liam brought me mango pudding and a single misshapen flower in a paper cup. He put it on my tray like it was a crown jewel. Souvenir from your first royal slap, he said. I laughed genuinely this time. You think it made an impact? He won't forget it. Good. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Liam said, you know, you didn't have to defend me. I didn't. You slapped your ex. For me. I looked at him. And smiled. For me. After the slap and the pudding and the paper cup flower, things were quieter. Not awkward quiet. Just easy. Thomas didn't come back. I knew he wouldn't. He wasn't the type to return once he'd been publicly humiliated. Not when the girl he thought he owned turned out to have a hand like a whip and a new man at her side. Liam had taken to limping around the hallway like he owned it, dramatically groaning every time he bent his knee. When the nurse offered him crutches, he refused. I've got my dignity, he said, hopping one leg toward the vending machine. You've got exactly 2 brain cells, that's what you've got, I muttered, walking beside him with folded arms. Harsh. But fair. He looked ridiculous. But he made me laugh. And in that laughter I started to feel like someone I hadn't seen in a long time. The me from before Thomas. The me who didn't need to shrink to fit into someone else's love. A few days later, Liam's housekeeper arrived at the hospital while I was sitting in the courtyard, sipping terrible hospital coffee and watching pigeons fight over a French fry. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with a sharp bun and even sharper eyes. She held a thick folder under her arm. Miss Moore? She asked gently. I stood. Yes. I work for Mr. Carter. Liam. He doesn't know I'm here. I tensed. Is something wrong? No. But he's stubborn and you deserve to know the truth. She handed me the folder. I opened it slowly. Inside were pages. Copies of bank statements, school records, donation receipts. Every scholarship I'd ever received from middle school through college. Every anonymous sponsor form I'd signed. Every thank you letter I'd written, thinking it had disappeared into some faceless system. But it hadn't. The address on every receipt matched the Carter estate. My hand trembled slightly. It was him. I whispered. All this time. She nodded. He's watched over you since a very long time. When he found out you were still alive after the orphanage fire, he never stopped looking. Once he inherited the estate, he made sure you were taken care of. Quietly. My heart thudded in my chest. But why didn't he say anything? Because he didn't want to burden you. He told me, she's already carrying enough. I swallowed hard. The woman patted my hand. He was just a boy when he lost everything. And yet the first thing he did when he found his footing was try to lift you up. Tears stung at the corners of my eyes. I'm not telling you this to pressure you, she added quickly. Just so you understand, his feelings aren't new. They're not based on pity. They've always been real. She left me there, folder clutched to my chest, heart splintering open in the gentlest way. That night I stood outside Liam's hospital room and watched him sleep. His head tilted to the side. One arm dangled off the bed. His mouth was slightly open. He looked peaceful, messy, awkward, infuriatingly warm. He'd pulled the covers halfway over his stomach and left the rest in a heap. The boy who used to drag me out of fights at the orphanage. The boy who once cried when I said he wasn't cute enough to marry. I stepped inside, closing the door quietly. He stirred. Did you ever plan to tell me? I asked. He blinked, slowly sitting up. Tell you what? I lifted the folder. His shoulders dropped. That, I echoed. You've been helping me since I was 13, Liam. Why? He rubbed the back of his neck. Honestly, I didn't think you'd remember me. You've changed a lot. So have you. Yeah. But I still see you. Same as I did back then. My chest tightened. He tried to smile. You were the only kid who talked to me. The others teased me for crying all the time. You gave me the blue rabbit plushie you won at the fair. You still remember that? I still have it. Tears threatened to fall, but I held them back. You saved me once, I whispered. From the fire. You saved me first, he said. From being invisible. I moved slowly toward the bed and sat down beside him. He looked at me. I looked at him. And then I leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't rushed. Or confused. Or desperate. It was quiet. Certain. Like we had always been headed toward this moment and were just waiting for the world to slow down enough to let it happen. When we finally pulled apart, he grinned. So, does this mean I get to call you my real fiancé now? I rolled my eyes. Shut up, Liam. He laughed and pressed his forehead against mine. I'd still choose you, Elena, he whispered. Even if it meant crashing into that car 100 times. I'd still choose you. And this time I didn't run. The first time I saw Thomas again after the kiss, it wasn't planned. I had just finished signing my discharge papers. Liam had insisted on pushing the wheelchair even though I didn't need it anymore, claiming it was ceremonial. It's symbolic, he said with mock seriousness. A dramatic farewell to our shared trauma. You're so full of yourself. I'm full of pudding. And love. I groaned, laughing despite myself. We were halfway to the hospital elevator when a nurse stopped us, breathless. There's a group downstairs. Some reunion event in the hospital's event hall. Alumni gathering for the foundation. Ms. Moore, you're actually listed in the program as a guest speaker. What? Liam blinked. You're famous now? I applied for a medical foundation grant back in college. Wrote an essay about growing up in an orphanage. I had forgotten about it. They hadn't. The nurse smiled. They want to introduce you. You're one of the recipients who went on to build a successful life. A scholarship success story. I looked at Liam. He grinned. You've got 20 minutes to become the main character. Let's go. The event hall was smaller than expected, decorated in navy and gold banners. The seats were already filled. Local businesspeople, former students, hospital donors. And among them, sitting in the third row with his arms folded, Thomas. I froze mid-step. He was alone. No Ava in sight. His hair was slightly longer. He looked tired, like someone who hadn't slept well in weeks. Liam noticed him too. You okay? He asked quietly. I'm fine. No, you're not. That's your ex, and he looks like he's auditioning for a sad indie film. I let out a breath and squared my shoulders. He doesn't matter. You sure? Yes, I said. But it wasn't just for Liam anymore. It was for me. When they called my name, the applause was polite but warm. I stood behind the podium staring out at the faces. Some curious. Some indifferent. And one pair of eyes, Thomas's, locked on me like he couldn't believe I was real. I took a breath. My name is Elena Moore, I began. I was raised in an orphanage on the east side of the city. Most of my childhood was a question mark. But one thing was constant: I wanted more. Not just money. Not status. But something better than survival. I wanted to live. I paused. I was told I wasn't good enough. That I was lucky to be chosen, lucky to be tolerated. But I wasn't lucky. I worked. I bled. I broke and rebuilt. I gave everything to people who didn't deserve it. Until one day I realized I could choose myself. There was a moment of stillness. Then applause. Real applause. Even Thomas clapped, slowly, hesitantly. Liam, however, clapped so loudly the people in front of him flinched. After the event, I stepped outside for air. The garden was quiet, filled with late afternoon sunlight and the soft buzz of bees over flowers. I stood near the bench, breathing in the scent of spring. And then, Elena. I turned. Thomas was there. I said nothing. I didn't expect to see you here, he said. I gave a short laugh. It's a public event. You looked incredible up there. I looked away. I didn't know, he said quickly, that you'd been through all that. I never really asked, did I? No. You didn't. He looked down. I've been thinking. About us. There is no us. His head snapped up. I never stopped caring about you, Elena. You stopped seeing me, Thomas. There's no difference. She left, he said suddenly. I blinked. Ava. She took the kid. Moved out 2 weeks ago. Why are you telling me this? Because I didn't know what I had until I lost it. I stared at him. He stepped closer. We had 5 years. That has to mean something. It does, I said softly. It means I learned what not to accept. He flinched. I didn't come here to fight, he said. Just to say I'm sorry. I was selfish. I took you for granted. You told me to grow up, I interrupted. When I was bleeding in a car. That was the last thing I heard from you. He closed his eyes. I don't want a second chance, I said. I don't want closure. I just want you to know. I'm done looking back. He was silent. Then, is he the one? I didn't answer. Instead, I turned my gaze to the garden path, where Liam was waiting, hands in his pockets, watching from a respectful distance. He was always there, I said. Thomas followed my eyes. I didn't even recognize him at first, I added. But somehow he found his way back to me. And this time I noticed. Thomas gave a bitter smile. I hope he treats you better than I did. I looked him in the eye. He already does. Back at the hospital wing, Liam was waiting with a bottle of apple juice and a pack of candy. You okay? He asked. I nodded. He offered the candy. I took it. What did he say? That he was sorry. Do you believe him? I opened the wrapper. Doesn't matter. We sat on the edge of the fountain, shoulder to shoulder. You ready to leave this place? He asked after a long pause. Yeah. Then let's go. The day I moved out of the city for good, it rained softly. Not the angry kind of rain, the kind that slaps windows and floods streets. Oh, this was gentler. Like the sky was rinsing everything clean. Liam was already outside loading the last of the boxes into his absurdly tiny car, humming off-key to a song only he seemed to know. The wind blew his hair into a mess and he didn't seem to care at all. I don't think these pillows are going to fit, he called, jamming them into the back seat anyway. I leaned against the doorframe and smiled. I told you we should have rented a van. I'm a man of principle, Elena. And I stand by my theory that anything can fit if you push hard enough. You're going to suffocate us in fabric. It'll be the softest death known to mankind. He looked up then, catching my gaze. And just like always, his expression softened. You ready? He asked. I nodded. I really was. We drove for hours. Out of the smog. Past the skyline I used to call home. Through winding hills and sun-drenched valleys. Liam had found us a place upstate. Nothing fancy, just a one-story cottage with a small porch and a vegetable patch. He claimed it was haunted by good energy. I told him he was full of it. But when we pulled up and I stepped out of the car, I felt it too. Peace. Real steady peace. I stood in the middle of the gravel driveway, arms stretched, letting the wind tangle my hair. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running toward or away from anything. I was just here. Alive. Over the next few weeks, life slowed. There were no office emails. No apartment alarms. No missed calls from someone who no longer loved me. Instead, there were sunrises. Grocery trips with Liam. Dinners on the porch with our feet propped up on a stool. One morning, I found him planting cherry tomato seeds by the fence. You hate tomatoes, I pointed out. He shrugged. You don't. And I like the color. Another evening, I woke up to find he'd hung fairy lights all around the porch. No reason, he said when I asked. Just felt like the place needed a little sparkle. And maybe that's when it happened. The moment I fully let go. Not just of Thomas, but of the girl I was when I met him. The girl who begged to be chosen. Who stayed silent to be loved. Who wore apology like perfume. She was gone. And in her place stood someone new. Someone softer but stronger. Quieter but louder in the ways that mattered. On a cloudy Thursday, I walked into the kitchen to find Liam staring at something on the counter. It was my old journal. The one I'd left untouched for years. I didn't read it, he said quickly, hands up. I know. He glanced down. You going to write again? I looked at the blank page and then at him. I think I'm ready. He smiled. Good. Because I've been dying to know what happens to that character of yours. The orphan girl who kept surviving. I smirked. She doesn't survive anymore. No. She lives. That night I sat on the porch alone. Liam had gone into town to pick up a few things, and the silence wrapped around me like a soft blanket. I pulled out the journal again, flipped to the middle and tore out one page. An old letter. To Thomas. I read it once more. The words still stung, but not in the same way. Then I lit a match and watched the edges curl in orange glow until all that remained was ash. Gone. Just like the hold he once had on me. When Liam returned, he found me standing by the fence with soot on my fingers and a calmness in my eyes he hadn't seen before. He didn't ask. He just wrapped his arms around my shoulders from behind and rested his chin on my head. This is it, huh? He murmured. What? You finally let go. I leaned back into him. Yeah, I whispered. And it feels free. The next morning, we danced in the kitchen to music from an old radio. Liam nearly tripped over the dog bowl he insisted on putting near the sink. I burned the toast. He pretended it was gourmet. Everything was simple. But nothing was small. Every moment mattered. Every smile meant something. Every second with him reminded me that love wasn't supposed to be a performance. It was supposed to feel like this. Natural. Warm. Real. Weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail. From Eva. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single line. He's still asking about you. I told him to stop. I smiled. Not out of pride. Or spite. But because I had moved on. And she hadn't. That evening, Liam and I watched the sunset from the hill behind the cottage. The sky was painted in fire. Orange and gold and pink. He reached over, slid his fingers into mine. Hey, he said. Yeah. If you had the chance, would you go back? Do it all differently. I thought about it. Then I shook my head. No, I said. Because all those broken roads led me here. He grinned. To me. To peace, I said. But then I kissed his cheek and added, you're a close second. He laughed, pulling me into his side. And as the stars began to prick the sky one by one, I knew. I wasn't the girl who waited. I was the woman who chose. And this time I chose me. I hadn't stepped foot in the orphanage for years. Not since I left for college. Not since I made a promise to myself that I would build a life so far from those gray walls that I'd never feel abandoned again. And yet here I was standing at the gate, Liam beside me holding 2 bags of books, snacks and supplies for the kids. He looked calm. But I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers curled tighter around the handles of the bags. This place held ghosts for both of us. You okay? I asked, nudging him gently. He nodded, eyes scanning the familiar brick facade. Just remembering. That's all. We walked in together. The moment the director saw us, her face lit up. Elena. Oh my goodness, is that really you? Mrs. Dalloway waddled out from the hall in her usual floral dress, her hair even more silver than I remembered. I hugged her tightly. Brought someone with me. When Liam stepped forward, she squinted for a second and then gasped. Liam Carter, she said, covering her mouth. You were the boy who cried over cockroaches in the old East Wing. Liam groaned. You remember that? I had to hold you like a burrito and carry you out, she laughed. I burst out laughing. I couldn't help it. The image of stoic, always composed Liam being terrified of a bug was too much. Is it really that funny? He asked deadpan. I wheezed. You afraid of a cockroach? That's going in my wedding speech. I take back every nice thing I've said about you, he muttered. The kids came running, pulling us toward the activity room. Liam handed out the supplies like some benevolent Sue, except with messy stickers in his hair and a 5-year-old clinging to his leg. I watched him melt into their world so effortlessly. He really had grown into himself. That night I was still giggling as we collapsed onto my bed. Okay, I said, catching my breath. I'll stop teasing. No, you won't, he said, eyes narrowing. I shook my head, still laughing. And that's when he rolled on top of me, pinning me down with both arms beside my head. Was it really that funny? He asked, mock-angry. I bit my lip, feigning innocence. A little. He leaned closer, lips brushing my ear. Say cockroach one more time, Elena. I grinned. Cockroach. His mouth crashed into mine, all mock anger forgotten. We kissed like we had all the time in the world. And for the first time in years, I wasn't holding back. A week later we were at the jeweler's. It wasn't official. No rings had been exchanged, no question asked, but we both knew where this was heading. The assistant brought out a tray of simple gold bands. I tried one on, turning it slowly in the light. Liam tilted his head. It suits you. Just as I smiled, a familiar voice cut through the room. Elena. I froze. Turning slowly, I saw him. Thomas. Holding a designer bag in one hand, a coffee in the other. Alone. He looked surprised. Phew. He stared at the ring on my finger. Liam's hand found mine immediately. Thomas took a step closer. You're getting married? I didn't flinch. Thinking about it. To him, he asked, voice brittle. To someone who never made me feel invisible. He blinked. I just thought, after everything, we had history. I smiled, cold and slow. History, I echoed. Thomas, history is what museums are for. I live in the present now. He glanced down at the rings, then at Liam. Are you seriously choosing this over everything we had? I looked him straight in the eye. Take your spoiled produce and leave, I said calmly. I'm not the one sniffing around anymore. The room went quiet. Even the assistant stilled, pretending not to hear, but clearly hearing everything. Thomas opened his mouth like he wanted to say more. But he didn't. He turned and walked out, the door shutting behind him with a final click. Liam squeezed my hand. You okay? I exhaled slowly. I think I just closed a chapter. He smiled. About time. We turned back to the rings. This time I didn't hesitate. The sky over the orphanage was impossibly clear that morning. Soft rays of golden light filtered through the old willow trees that lined the backyard. Someone had strung paper flowers across the fence. White, blush, and lavender. They swayed gently in the breeze, like they were blessing the day in their own quiet way. There were no church bells, no designer gowns, no hundreds of guests. Just me, Liam, a dozen children tugging at our sleeves, and the people who had seen us through the darkest chapters of our lives. Mrs. Dalloway stood in front of us, holding a tiny booklet in her wrinkled hands. I'm not a licensed minister, she said with a teasing glare, but I have a big voice and no fear of public speaking, so I'll do. The kids giggled. I looked at Liam. He was wearing a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up and a blue tie that was slightly crooked, thanks to one of the toddlers who insisted on helping. His hair was messier than usual and he had a sunflower tucked behind one ear. He looked perfect. You sure about this? I whispered, smiling. Only thing I've ever been sure of, he whispered back. Mrs. Dalloway cleared her throat. Ahem. May I proceed? We laughed and nodded. It wasn't a traditional ceremony. There were no vows memorized, no readings from sacred texts. Just words that came straight from the heart. I don't have a long speech, Liam said, his voice low and steady. But I do have a promise. I promise to never let you feel alone in a room again. I promise to be your family, not just your partner. My chest ached in the best way. I took his hands. And I promise to stop laughing at the cockroach story, I whispered. Liar, he muttered under his breath. I smiled and said louder, I promise to build a home with you. A real one. With or without walls. The children clapped. Mrs. Dalloway wiped a tear. And with the sunlight warming our faces, Liam kissed me for the first time as my husband. No fanfare. His love. Pure. Quiet. Unshakable. 3 years later. I saw the headline before I saw the message. Scandal hits Bennett Cross marriage. Shocking DNA test results leak online. I didn't even need to read the full article. I already knew. Ava and Thomas had finally imploded. The child, his supposed son, was not his. The DNA test had been done after months of legal disputes, and apparently Thomas had hired a private investigator when things stopped adding up. The result was public, ugly, and humiliating. The group chats lit up with commentary. I didn't reply to any of them. Liam walked in, balancing 2 mugs of cocoa, and set mine by my side. "The internet's on fire again," he said casually. I saw. "Any regrets?" I turned to him. We were curled up in our little sunroom, the garden outside blooming in soft pastels. A sleepy cat purred at our feet. The scent of lavender and lemon balm wafted in from the open window. I sipped the cocoa. "None." He leaned back and pulled me into his chest. "Good. Because I'm not letting you go back and save anyone again." "I'm not a saint," I said. "No, you're better. You're Elena Moore, the only woman I've ever loved. And the only woman who makes me read bedtime stories to a 3-legged cat because he's had a hard life." I snorted into his shirt. "Compassion builds character." He kissed the top of my head. "So does marrying the girl who used to beat me at spelling bees." "I let you win once." He groaned. "That's worse." We sat there in the warmth of a life we had built with no blueprints, no roadmaps, just heart. And for the first time, I wasn't haunted by the girl who had once waited on a rooftop for a man who never showed. I wasn't that girl anymore. I had chosen my family. And he had chosen me too, again and again. The end.